2, 3, 4, 5 little ducks went swimming one day over the hill and far away. Mother duck said,
Quack, quack, quack.
but only 4 little ducks came back.
Listen, I understand boxing fans. I'm a boxing fan. I've been a boxing fan all my life. It's probably my favorite sport to cover. It's probably my favorite sport to talk about. But I understand your frustration. You're tired of not getting fights that should be easy to make, and you want answers. So I have some for you. Now, the real question here is, did Bud Crawford duck the smoke of Errol Spence Jr.? Now, the first thing that you need to know is that you cannot trust boxing media. Boxing media, fighting sports media, is a totally different breed than the NFL or baseball or basketball. They're just different, right? So you have certain media individuals that are in the pocket of certain promoters, certain networks, certain fighters. So when you see information about Bud Crawford on ESPN, yeah, you got to take it with a grain of salt. When you see certain information about the Zone or Eddie Hearn or the PBC and Al Heyman, you have to check the source and see if they're in the pocket of these fighters and promoters, because they're going to lean one way when maybe the truth leans the other way. Here's what we know factually. Factually, we know that Bud Crawford is no longer with Top Rank Boxing and Bob Arum. We know factually that Bob Arum once said that he always loses money on Bud Crawford, and he's lost so much money that he can build a house from scratch, a mansion in Beverly Hills. That's his words, not ours. And he said it right in front of Bud Crawford, said it right in front of his face. So we know factually that Bud Crawford, talented fighter as he is not a draw. On the other side, we have PBC Island, and that's where Errol Spence Jr. resides. And we know at times it can be difficult if you're on PBC Island to work with other fighters that are on different promotions. But in this case, it shouldn't have mattered because Bud Crawford is a free agent. So after Errol Spence beat Udonis, ooh, guys, should have been a fairly easy fight to make. It was clear that Bud Crawford was the B side, that the PBC was going to front the money, for the fight. It would be a big time fight. It would happen sometime in the fall or the winter, and we would all watch and we would all be happy. So, what exactly happened? My sources tell me that there isn't 100% of the blame that you can put on one person or the other. But if you had to put the majority of the blame, it would be with Bud Crawford. It seems like a couple of months ago that the majority of the issues in the contract were resolved and were sent to Bud Crawford. At that time, that's when you heard the story about he wasn't happy about the transparency of the books and he wanted to know where all the money was coming from, et cetera, et cetera. I've been told that Bud Crawford's lawyer at that point had certain issues in the contract that he wanted restructured. At that point, it went back to the PBC lawyers. They restructured the contract, but when they restructured the contract, because it was getting so late in the year, that they informed Bud Crawford that the fight would have to happen early in 2023. So after agreeing to Bud's terms and telling them that they could schedule the fight in early 2023 to do the proper marketing and promotion, use the Super Bowl and other things that were going on at the time, they could possibly make more money having the fight in early 2023 than having it in late November or early December. They got silence from Bud Crawford. And then, pretty much out of nowhere, Crawford informs them that he's fighting David Avanesyan. Crawford tells his media people that he did not want to stay inactive and wanted to fight in December no matter what. Now, the reason that this doesn't really make a lot of sense, and we just have to use common sense, we can't be biased. We have to use common sense. Just look at it like this. If you knew that you had a mega fight that was happening in January or early February that was going to make you millions of dollars, watched by millions of people, be the biggest fight of your career, the career defining fight of your career, and you normally only fight once a year anyway, it's not like you're overly active, why would you take a chance on fighting someone in December, just 45 days before your scheduled mega fight? Now, Bud Crawford has told people that he's making 8 figures for fighting David Avanesyan. Now, let me tell you something. If that is true, which I highly doubt it is, something's real fishy is going on. You know why? Because they don't even have a promotional outlet for this fight. It's going to be on some app called Black Prime. If you've never heard of it before, you're not alone. Neither have I. And it's going to be charged $39.99. We have no idea who's paying Bud Crawford. Is it Black Prime? Is it somebody else? When did Black Prime get $10 million for Bud Crawford, who's never made more than $5 million in a fight? Something's real fishy going on here. Bud Crawford said his intentions are to fight Errol Spence after the David Avanesyan fight, but there is no guarantees that will happen. I can tell you factually that the people on the PB side are very upset with Bud Crawford. They spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to get this fight over the line. Errol Spence Jr., who's been training for a fight that he thought was going to happen in November and now potentially in February, is very upset that Bud Crawford, without any knowledge or any really telling them heads up that he's taking another fight, therefore pushing their potential fight into the spring and summer. PBC has a lot of welterweights, and they control a lot of all of the belts with Charlo at 154. They can essentially lock out Bud Crawford from having any big fights if they want to. He could have potentially blackballed himself. Hopefully, cooler heads prevail, and we do get the fight maybe in the summer, or maybe if we're lucky in May. But the fact of the matter is, if you're just asking me, if it looks like a duck and it acts like a duck and it quacks, quacks, quacks. My daughter loved that song. She really loves that song. Like a duck. And Bud Crawford, he's ducking that smoke. And you should be ashamed if you have him number one on your pound for pound list. Not because he doesn't have the skills to be number one pound for pound, but because he hasn't fought anyone in almost over a year. His resume is not great. His biggest accomplishment, going undisputed at 140, has happened years ago. The pound for pound king should be active in taking big fights. That's just my opinion. Because what if we just ranked Alabama number one and all they faced was Little Sisters of the Poor every week, but we rank them number one just because they're Alabama? Doesn't work like that. This is the duck. We'll see what happens in the future. But if you're being unbiased and you're being honest and you're using common sense, Terence Bud Crawford, who I like a lot, duck that smoke. Like and subscribe. They tell me to say that at the end of the video. This is Robert Littal, Headline.